6.2 is the V8, the big V8, right? All three engines have certain things in common. We're going to talk about that. I won't lie to you. I wish they had made the 4.3 the same, but call it a 4.2 or 4.4. Because the problem when you call it a 4.3 V6, people go, you know, I had one of those in a 1988 S10 pickup truck. Or, you know, my 99 Astrovan had a 4.3. It's the same size engine. It's not the same engine. If I go up to the local thrift store, you know, the one down the road here, right? And I buy a lime green polyester leisure suit. Don't laugh, I look really good those in the old days. Or if I go to New York and I buy a, you know, Brooks Brothers custom blend silk tailored suit, they're both size 44. They're sure as heck are not the same suit. This is not an Astrovan engine, all right? First of all, this engine, the V6, just like all of the engines, the 5.3 and the 6.2, they're all aluminum blocks with steel sleeves. In other words, the block itself is made out of aluminum, but the part where the explosion takes place, where the pistons go up and down and the piston rings, that's lined with steel, the cylinder walls. So you get the longevity of a steel engine as far as the pistons and the piston rings go, but you get lightweight of aluminum, and aluminum gets rid of heat faster than steel does. That's why an aluminum can in the refrigerator, man, 20 minutes later your beer's cold. It dissipates heat really fast. Well, heat is the enemy of an engine, so we want it to dissipate heat. So that's why an aluminum block is wonderful for an engine. It gets rid of the heat that kills the engine. But the steel sleeve gives it the longevity.
Plus, you can replace the liner in it. You can press it out just like a diesel engine. They'll press a new liner in it. You can rebuild it easy. Yeah,
you don't have to. Remember, in the old days, you would bore them out and put bigger pistons in there. Well, nowadays, in theory, you could just replace the liner. Yeah. Well, and you're right. Bobby's right. That's one of the reasons why race car guys did that for years, because they wanted the aluminum engine for lightweight for racing, but also you could rebuild that engine time after time after time after time. Those drag race guys that, you know, they make one or two passes and the engine is junk.
Yeah, they got to rebuild it.
They end up they replace the steel sleeve. They don't replace the whole block.
Those guys are quick too. They can rebuild that motor in no time.
Oh, you're not kidding. But this is the principle here. It's the same principle they use in motorsport. So, aluminum block with steel sleeves, lightweight. All right. It's a push rod engine, gentlemen. In other words, it has a single camshaft down in the middle. It has a single timing chain that connects the crankshaft and the camshaft. Push rods are these things right here. That, you know what a camshaft is, right, guys?
Yep.
That's a camshaft. It's a long stick. It's got oblong. As it rotates, there's little lobes. Push the push rods up, which make the rocker arms go back and forth, which pushes the valves open and close. Push rod engine. But here's the beauty of it. We're the only manufacturer that figured out how to have what they call variable valve timing with a push rod engine. Variable valve timing, it's the relationship when the valves open and close versus where the piston is on the stroke. What it means is, does the engine make a lot of power at low RPM, or does it rev nice and high and make power at high RPM? Our engine does both. Lots and lots of torque at low RPM. Remember, torque is a measurement of twisting power. It's grunt. Everybody says, what's the horsepower of this engine? But really, when they need to accelerate, they want torque. Right? So here's the thing. Our engines make, and this is true whether we're talking a 1.4 and a cruise or we're talking a Duramax, our engines make maximum torque, grunt, oomph, whatever you want to call it, at the lowest practical RPM. But because of variable valve timing, they will rev fairly high. You can drive, you know, horsepower keeps you going, torque gets you going. NASCAR guys like horsepower, 201, 200, 201, 202, 201, right? Mile an hour. Drag racers start at 0 and they accelerate to 201 mile an hour. They want torque. NASCAR, horsepower. Drag racing, torque. If you need to accelerate, if you're going to haul your boat down to Lake Anna and you need to haul that big heavy boat or trailer up to the mountains, you want torque, grunt, oomph. Okay? We're the only manufacturer who figured out how to have that engine that has lots of torque at low horsepower, at low RPM, lots of horsepower at high RPM, but only do that with one camshaft. This engine makes 383 pounds-foot of torque. That's pretty impressive. It makes it about 4,200 RPM. But what's more impressive is it makes 90% of that at around 1,900 to 2,000 RPM. In other words, this engine at 2,000, no, just under 2,000 RPM, about 1,900 RPM, it makes 344 pounds-feet of torque. 90% of all the power on this engine is already available below 2,000 RPM. And here's what you can tell your customer. Have your customer fire this baby up.
It's what he's saying is most important, not the directorial purpose.
Well, you just put the audio on for it and save a lot of data.
Because he's pointing to
What
stuff
if I
too.
told you 90% of the power already there up to 2,000 RPM. In other words, here's 2,000, here's about 1,900 RPM. What's out there is already making 90% of its power. That's hardly any change. Heck, it idles at 750. Just about 1,000, maybe 1,100 RPM past idle. 90% of the power is already there. In other words, this thing makes gobs and gobs of torque without revving the wee-wee out of the engine. That's as polite as I can put it. Well, think about it. If I got an engine that makes gobs and gobs of torque, grunt, oomph, at very low RPMs, I can probably drive up and down Route 17 here or Route 29 all day long and not take it much over 3,000 RPM. Well, if I drive all day long and don't rev the motor up very high, there's some advantages there, right?
Gas mileage.
Gas mileage, less noise, less wear and tear on the engine. You're only going to turn the motor over too many times before it wears out. If I turn it over fewer times every mile I drive, maybe I get to drive more miles. Longevity. So the fact that we have these engines that make gobs and gobs of power and torque without revving the stuffings out of them, that's an advantage for our customers. And as I say, we're the only folks that figured out how to do that with a single camshaft, because there's a Ford. It has variable valve timing, but it has
Two cams.
well, 4. You got 2 here, and then you got 2 more over there.
One bank runs intake valves and one runs the exhaust
Yeah.
valves on that truck.
And you got one timing chain there, you got another timing chain there, and then you got a big timing chain that's got enough length to make 3 or 4 timing chains. There's 25% fewer moving parts on a Chevrolet than there is on a Ford. And you know what, gentlemen? Those parts weigh. They're hardened steel. It sits high, so you have a higher center of gravity. Our Ford, our 5.3 liter V8 weighs about the same as their V6. You ever wonder why Ford put their truck on a diet with an aluminum body? Maybe it's because their engines are so heavy.
It's complicated too. The more moving parts you have, the more
Absolutely. The more noise that chain's going to make, right? So
Clutch
here's
guides, lots of lubrication too. Chains need lubrication or they wear out.
absolutely. You want to see the water pump on a Chevy? Excuse me, sir.
It's external, man.
Yeah. Here's the water pump on a Chevy. I'm touching it. That thing right there. That's the water pump right there. Now, I don't really want to do it, but I guess a shade tree mechanic could probably change that out if you had a little bit of patience and time. You can reach it. It bolts on the outside of the engine.
Roland pump hard to change out though. They were just bolted to the front of the motor.
Right.
That's
Well,
what
this
they're-
one's not bad either.
Yeah, no.
But check out where it is on a Ford.
Oh Lord.
Oh, Lord is right.
Is it still bolted to the front of the engine?
It's behind the timing chain there.
Oh
Yep.
my God, you gotta take the timing chain
You
out.
got to take the timing chain off. That's about a $600 or $700 job there to do that. You know, because if you drive an engine 300,000 or 400,000 miles, you're probably going to put a water pump on it eventually.
That's kind of a pain.
But that's $500 or $600 job, maybe a little bit more, not much more. That is an $1,800 job.
Oh yeah.
And do you really think the mechanic's gonna go, well, Steve, I'll save you some money. We'll put all the old chime and chain parts back
Oh, no,
on.
they're never
No.
gonna do
They're gonna go, well, Steve, while we're in there, we ought to put new time and chain. What do you think, Bobby? Put new time and chain on that baby? Huh?
We'll put new guides in it.
No,
too.
new guides, yeah. I don't know about those actuators there on the end there. Maybe they had. Time you get that water pump on that Ford, it might be $3,000, not $600 or $700. Cost of ownership, gentlemen. Make sense?
Yep.
That's
I
why.
can tell you from a standpoint from somebody that worked on